When you think of the biggest names on the web, who comes to mind? The big ones, right? The apps you use every single day. But what if I told you a bunch of them are all built on the same secret ingredient? A shared foundation that lets them get, well, huge. Okay, let's start with Instagram. I mean, it's way more than just a photo app, right? It's a global phenomenon. We're talking over 2 billion people using it every month. Think about that. That's like a quarter of everyone on Earth scrolling and tapping away. The scale is just mind-blowing. And then there's Spotify, the app that totally changed the music game. It's pushing out custom playlists and podcasts to over 500 million of us in, like 180 countries? It's basically the soundtrack to our daily lives. And all of that is running on some seriously heavy-duty tech in the background. Don't forget Pinterest. That's the go-to spot for visual inspiration, right? Over 450 million people are on there every month planning, well, everything. Dinners, vacations, home renovations, you name it. Every single pin is an idea, and there are billions of them getting saved and sorted every single day. So, okay, you've got these absolute titans, social media, music, search, and they're all operating at a scale that's just hard to even wrap your head around. Billions of clicks, scrolls, and shares every day. So that brings us to the big question, doesn't it? What's the one piece of secret tech holding it all together? Well, here it is. The secret ingredient is a web framework built on Python, and it's called Django. Yep, from your favorite social apps to your music streaming service, even huge sites for places like NASA and the Washington Post, Django is the quiet workhorse making it all happen. So what is Django anyway? The easiest way to picture it is like a superpowered toolkit for building websites. Because it's a high-level Python framework, it takes care of all the boring, repetitive stuff in web development. This lets developers focus on the cool part, actually building complex, powerful websites that look good and just work. Right, so to really get why these massive companies trust Django, we've got to look at its core philosophies. And these aren't just friendly suggestions, They're the fundamental rules, the recipe, if you will, that makes Django so darn powerful. First on the list is a classic in the coding world. Don't repeat yourself, or DRY for short. The idea is actually super simple but really powerful. Instead of copy-pasting the same chunk of code everywhere, you just write it once, turn it into a reusable piece, and call it when you need it. It makes everything cleaner, way easier to manage, and you get way fewer bugs. And this is a perfect way to see it in action. On the left, you've got the wrong way to do it, just copying and pasting code. It's a mess, right? But on the right, that's the Django way. It's clean, it's efficient. You write the logic one time in one place, and then you just use it whenever you need it. So much better. Okay, next up is this idea called fat models, thin views. It's a really key part of how Django is built. Basically, it means all the heavy lifting, all the complicated logic and data stuff stays in what's called the model. Meanwhile, the view, that's the part you actually see on your screen, is kept super simple. I love this analogy. It's like keeping the chef's genius in the kitchen and not asking the waiter to cook the food on the way to your table. And this slide really gets at another core idea. Just keep it simple. Seriously. Instead of writing code that's like a tangled ball of yarn that nobody can figure out later, Django really encourages developers to write clean, clear, readable stuff. It might take a few extra seconds up front, but trust me, it pays off big time down the road when you have to fix something or add a new feature. So you might be asking, how do these principles actually help in the real world? Well, let's take a look. We're about to see how Django goes from just lines of code to powering some of the most important applications out there, from the web to the cosmos. Now look, Django gives developers an amazing box of tools, but it's not some magic wand. As they say in the official docs, security is a two-way street. Django gives you the locks and the keys, but it's up to the developer to actually lock the door. And when you're talking about something like space exploration, those locks better be the best you can. And that's exactly why an organization like NASA uses Django. It has all these security features baked right in, designed to protect against the most common attacks on the web. They meet these super strict government standards from the get-go. So NASA uses it for their public websites, which get hammered with traffic during a launch, but also for internal tools that handle incredibly sensitive mission data. When a rocket is taking off, those systems absolutely positively cannot go down. But what happens when you need to scale to the absolute edge of what's possible? For that, we've got to look at Instagram. Get this, they run the world's largest Django setup. And we're not talking millions of interactions here. We're talking billions. every single day. So, how on earth do they do that? Well, they started with the solid foundation Django gives you, and then they basically put it on steroids. They tweaked the data part of it for insane performance. They build their own login system from scratch to handle billions of people. They use other tools like Celery to manage all the stuff that happens in the background, like when you upload a video, so the app never feels slow. They even did something pretty wild. They turned off a core Python feature called garbage collection just to get an extra 10% boost in speed. That's how serious they are. All right, let's switch gears to Spotify. They do things a little differently using something called a microservices architecture. So instead of having one gigantic app, their system is made up of hundreds of tiny little services that all talk to each other. And as you can see here, a massive 80% of those services are built with Python, and you guessed it, Django is a huge player in that whole ecosystem. So what this really means is that Spotify is this whole city of little services, all chattering away to each other. You might have one Django app that's just in charge of your playlists and another one that handles your user profile. This setup makes them super flexible because they can update one tiny piece of the puzzle without having to shut down the whole operation. And all of this kind of brings us full circle, back to the big why. Why do all these giants bet on Django? Because it's a pragmatic powerhouse. And the thing that some developers might complain about, the fact that it's very structured and has strong opinions on how to do things, well, that turns out to be its biggest strength. In engineering, everything's a trade-off, and this chart lays it out perfectly. With Django, you get to build stuff incredibly fast, but the trade-off is that you have to follow its structured way of doing things. It's famous for being batteries included, meaning it comes with a ton of stuff already built in, like an admin area and security tools. That's great because you write less code, but it also means you have a little less freedom to do things your own way. It gives you a clear path to get really big, but you have to be smart about how you design your app from the start. So at the end of the day, Django's real power is that it's just so pragmatic. It makes a very deliberate trade. It gives up a bit of that do whatever you want freedom, and in return, it gives you blazing fast development speed, rock-solid security, and a time-tested roadmap for building huge, dependable apps that just won't fall over. And that really leaves us with one last thing to chew on. In a world where there are endless tools and frameworks to choose from, is a framework that has really strong opinions about the right way to do things a bug, or is it actually a feature? Something to think about for sure.